Hi, this is John Ridley. I'm the founder of No Studios, and I'm actually at No Studios in Milwaukee, Wisconsin for our annual Social Justice Summit this year, celebrating immigrant voices and elevating their stories in their words. I just want to take a couple of moments, first of all, to welcome everyone who is here physically and to everyone who is watching or streaming online. I also want to take a moment to thank our incredible team and staff at No Studios who've done an absolutely remarkable job of bringing together this year's Social Justice Summit. I do want to thank our main partners, WIS in Television, and also American Family Insurance and their Institute for Corporate and Social Impact. We have such amazing programs that have been going on all day long. I've been here in person, I've been watching online, and the education that I've gotten, even as an individual who considers himself to be progressive, sometimes to just listen, to learn, and to hear from other people is the most impactful thing that any one of us can do. So again, thank you to all of you who've made this happen. Thank you to all of us, to all of you who are joining us from across the country, and some people from even around the world. And please stay tuned for our next panel about art and activism, which is a topic that is very, very close to my heart. Thank you very much.
Welcome, everyone, and I'm pleased to meet you virtually. I'm Pamela Anchan. I'm the founder and managing editor of the Immigrant magazine. I'm also a radio and TV host. I'm coming to you from California, a very immigrant state, and I'm extremely excited to be part of this amazing discussion on immigrant voices. Our topic today is the role of arts media in shaping the immigrant narrative. When we think of activism, most people immediately go to street protests or marches. So, if you're not one of them, you still feel that your protest as an artist counts. Our panelists today are artists who say, yes, it matters and your voice counts. Their task is to demonstrate the role that art plays in shifting narratives and perceptions around such issues as immigration and social justice. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our panelists. First, Alysia Reiner, an actress and activist, right there. Alysia is best known as Fig on all 7 seasons of Orange is the New Black, for which she won a SAG Award. She just wrapped her 5th season as Sunny on the Peabody Award-winning Better Things on FX HULU, as well as the 1st season of STARZ' Shining Vale with Courtney Cox and Greg Kinnear. Congratulations. Next up, we have Jeanette Arellano, a Milwaukee-based community activist artist. She dedicates her effort in Milwaukee's Latinx community, creating work on issues on cultural, social change, and immigration. Through her work, Jeanette collaborates with artist activist groups such as Voces De Los Artistas, Art Build Workers, and Raices Revolucionarias. Hi, Jeanette, shout out. Nice to meet you. And then we also have Ren Ayala, who's a traditional womb keeper, medicine maker, poet, writer, and multi-dimensional artist with indigenous roots from Abya Yala within Michoacan, Mexico. Hello, girl. And then we also have Giovanni Hernandez Caballero. Giovanni is a photojournalist and community artist who lives and works in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. His work pays homage to his ancestral homeland. Hi, Giovanni. Nice to meet you. And we also have Enrique Cristobal, an artist and activist with CCIJ. He is a substance abuse counselor, mentor, and community organizer, and someone who during 17 years of incarceration attended classes, workshops, self-help groups, and obtained his GED, as well as his certification to be a substance use counselor. So proud of you, Enrique. Welcome to the panel. And last but not least, Juanita Monsalve, Senior Marketing and Creative Director for United We Dream. As such, she leads the network's digital engagement of members, communication and narrative strategies, as well as culture change strategies to build the power of undocumented people in the United States. right? So welcome everyone. So happy to have you all. I know our panel has been, we've been waiting in anticipation. Can't wait to get to it. So let's just go down to it. I want to first start off with Giovanni. Giovanni, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. How you doing?
I'm doing great. So first, I want you to tell us a little bit about your family's heritage because that matters so much to you. And of course, your journey as an immigrant.
Yeah, I think for me, my art has always been based around kind of like my experiences, my family's history, my family's story, and kind of growing up here in the south side of Milwaukee, being surrounded by so many organizations that deal and work with immigration rights and social justice. I've always just been so intrigued on how art and activism has been used throughout history and even now. And for me, that influenced my own artistic practice, and then eventually leading me to create, artwork that hopefully inspires that next generation of artists.
That's amazing. So how has it been for you? You feel like you've been able to.
Can you repeat that again? It's just a little hard to hear.
Okay, I was just wondering if you felt that your art has been able to create an impact.
Yeah, so being able to create that impact has been so important to me, especially wanting to pursuing a career within art. I've always kind of been told these metrics are always galleries, exhibitions, art museums. Like that is how you kind of quantify that worth as an artist. But I think for me, my own personal greatest achievement has been able to create, a simple design that became a symbol of hope for my community. For me, being able to carry that legacy that my artwork is inspiring, these social movements that people are engaging with my work at a personal and emotional level is truly, for me, that greatest achievement.
That's awesome. I want to go now to Ren. So Ren, your wallpaper heavily is multi-hyphenate artist. In a nutshell, tell us a little bit about that. How did that happen?
So I feel like I've always been really intrigued with holistic healing and the arts since I was a child and how those are interwoven and connected with each other. Ever since I think the least or my most favorite memory was around when I was 6, and I remember being in the backyard in the garden and collecting all the plantitas, the plants that called to me, and putting them together and putting all these different ingredients and mixing it, putting my intentions and just creating a product, but being a part of the process, right? And as I became a writer throughout all my rest of the years, I started to see the similarities and how holistic healing and the arts and traditional wisdom are connected to all the other forms of art. For example, when I make medicine, I sing to it, and I feel like I'm putting my medicine into it, my own energy, right? If you were to say. And I dance with the plants in my garden. I feel like all of these different mediums are all very, very similar in my heart. And how it came to be was really when I went through a dark period of depression in my teenage years, and I felt very disconnected from not only myself and my environment, my loved ones, everything around me. I felt almost blind. And slowly I started kind of waking up, and I felt like I was coming out of a cocoon, right? If I was like a butterfly and I was just kind of in my winter, and I would write a lot of poetry when I was in that state. And I started to see how it metamorphosized in its own way, and my art started flowing through my own spirit and how it was showing up. And I remember doing my first poetry slam as a 15-year-old. And I just started being awakened by how much activism was really being talked about in those spaces about social justice and mental health, right, and immigration and my own family stories and so many other things that people go through and sometimes feel like they don't know or they don't even have a space to be able to share that information with. And so through art, we can create that emotion and we can channel it and put it into something beautiful, and we can give it and receive as well. And just being a part of community, that's really what I think led me to be here.
That's amazing. They say from the darkest time, sometimes the amazing things can be uncovered. So amazing. Go to Juanita now. Juanita, you are the senior marketing and creative director for United We Dream. How do you employ the art to support your mission?
Thanks, Pamela. First, I want to say thank you to everyone for having me here. It's so lovely to be here in this panel with so many impressive artists. I think for me, it's just really important for us to acknowledge the role that immigrant people and people of color play in art often is ignored and forgotten. But really, I think that immigrant people and people of color are the creators, they're the consumers, and therefore the arbitrators of critiquers of art and culture. And that art really defines our culture, which in turn defines us. And so for us at United We Dream, it's really important to, one, have art come directly from impacted people. We are the largest young immigrant organization in the country. And for us, all of our team of artists are impacted. And so we want to make sure that their voices are heard. And we want to make sure to work with artists because that art can actually transform who we are. And so for us, the work that I'm doing is to ensure that we are creating art that allows us to envision a new future where we can all truly be free and where equity can exist. Often, we don't know what we don't know. And so art allows us to envision a new world and to open that door that can transform our values into a world of abundance and collective care and unity. And so that's part of why art is such an important part of our work at United We Dream.
That's amazing. I was just wondering, as someone that is into communications and strategies and narratives and all of that, tell us a little bit about the Move into the Future project, which you have in Houston, and your collaboration with the Black Lives Matter movement, and how you employ strategies to bring that mission to fruition.
Definitely. Moving to the Future is a sculpture, as you mentioned, that exists in Houston. And we work together with the Houston Black Lives Matter group to be able to bring it into life. As many of you know, across the country, our communities have been the targets of conservatives' efforts to stamp out and erase the contributions of Black, Brown, and immigrant leaders when it comes to literature, to culture, and to education, including the legislative ban of books that we're seeing all over the country. And so we wanted to take an opportunity to be able to bring together Black, Indigenous, immigrant, and Brown artists into conversation about what our future could look like if we really take into account abundance and if we care about each other and bring forth collective care. And so we created a sculpture of two giant shoes in collaboration with Big Bowl of Ideas. And these two shoes had tessellations that allowed the artist to create various pieces of art that brought the conversation forward of what our future might look like. Even after or amidst these attacks, right? Reminding us of the power that we have. And so even holding or being a part of that interaction with art and these two giant shoe sculptures that are over 10 feet high was a part of showing young people and showing people of color that our voices matter and that together we can create a new future that cares for us all. And so even in the midst of attacks, if we come together and hold these conversations, we can change what our world looks like. And so that was part of the work of this sculpture, with the idea again that the shoes represent us being able to move into the future together, and each one of us plays a role in that tessellation. So we really hope that folks can go and see it as well.
Yeah, I really pray that they actually go out and see it. And I'm so intrigued by the fact that you are connected with the Black Lives Matter movement, because a lot of times it seems like there's a disconnect between Black and Brown people who really should be working together. What are your thoughts about that? Alysia?
Yes, I think that is a really important piece of our work. Often, I think in the previous panel, they had a small conversation about it as well, right? There's a way in which white supremacy is intently trying to separate and put Black folks and brown people against each other, when really we should be working together, because once one of us is free, once all of us are free, that's when we'll really reach a world where we can have access to true freedom and to equity. And so for us, that's really important to be able to bring young people and to also let people know that immigrants look of all races and all ethnicities, right? And that there is something that unites us as immigrant people, regardless of our nationality and inclusive of our race. So that's a big part of our work as well.
I love that. Thank you so much. Now let me defer to our actress on the panel, Alysia, Miss Alysia. Alysia, I just want to ask you, as an actress and a professional in the entertainment industry, how do you see media shaping the narratives of marginalized communities? What's been your experience?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me here. And it's been so beautiful to listen to everybody else. And I so want to have so many side conversations. And particularly, I just have to touch upon the idea of separating us, because I do believe that is sort of the goal of white supremacy, is to pit us against one another. And particularly as a cisgendered, white-bodied, Jewish, I consider myself immigrant human. It's so important for me to continue to see us as all one, and to uplift the stories of folks who are more recent immigrants, or are LGBTQ plus, or are people of color. I feel like that's my duty as an artist. That's part of my mission. And when I think about your question, I feel like there are 3 buckets almost: the stories we tell, who's telling them, and how we're telling them. Yeah. Right? So what does that mean for me personally as an actress? I get to choose the stories I tell. Bless. Now I do. I feel like there was a time in my career where I was just a little bit more hand to mouth, and I would take any story and I wouldn't care really, because I had to pay the rent. But I'm at a place now where I get to choose the stories a little bit more, and I get to say no if I feel like a story is not moving humanity forward in reference to, be it an immigrant community, people of color, women, whatever story it is. And then there's the who's telling that story, right? So again, as a white cisgendered body, my goal is to then, like, how can I find people who have different stories and invite them to the table? Like, that's my goal with the privilege that I have. How many doors can I open? How many people can I help make sure they get the opportunity that I might have because of my white body? And then the how of it is also that of, like, being willing to step away, or to say, like, you know what, I've been offered things where it's written for someone of color, and I've said, you know what, I'm not gonna audition for this. I think this needs to be a person from that community, and I don't want to take away an opportunity from someone in that community. And then there's also the how, like, really looking at how we're telling the stories, and is there a level of respect? I work with the Gina Davis Institute, which is an incredible organization that started majoritively about making sure more women are represented in media, and then has really expanded to people of color and immigrant communities, and they have a new product called Spell Check for Bias. So you give them your script and they'll check, is there a fair representation of women? Is there a fair representation, like amount of humans that are people of color, are immigrants, are different body shapes, are differently abled, like it's a different age, or over 50. And it's a really beautiful way to make sure we're as representative as possible in our storytelling.
That's amazing. And that's magnanimous of you to yield certain opportunities to someone that you feel will truly represent that culture. And, this is what we talk about, I guess, where you're saying representation and diversity all coming to this meeting place. In the past, we all know Hollywood, which is your industry, lack of representation. I mean, we had Oscars so white and so on as always. Do you think that over time, things have shifted for the better? Or is it like some hypocrisy? Like, let's just do it just to, put a check mark. Yeah, we have this, we have that. Do you think the culture is changing?
I think there's two answers to that. I think yes and yes. I think a lot of Hollywood is doing it because it's the right thing to do, and they'll get that little check mark, and it's like, just like as a woman, it's like they get the check mark for hiring the women. So there definitely is that, yes. And if that momentum isn't kept up, it will decline again, like as we've seen in the cyclical nature of art so many times. And at the same time, I do believe there's something of a reckoning, and my philosophy has always been don't wait, create, and don't wait for someone, for the system to change or the culture to change. Be a part of changing the culture. So I've produced 2 movies, and in both movies my first movie, I hired a female director, a female writer, mostly female crew, a woman of color is the director. And my second movie, I did that even more. The movie that I'm working on right now, it's the same thing of like, I can't change Hollywood, but I can change my choices. So that's really what it's all about, is how in my personal choices, be it going to a march or a protest or working, I work with an organization called Sanctuary Neighborhood here in New York City, which essentially takes undocumented people who have just come out of ICE and adopts them like you would if you were their cousin that they don't have in America, and you help them get housing, and you help them get like law services and health services and all the things. And so what, as again, I feel like as an actress in this industry, what can I do? And asking myself that question on a daily basis, what does it mean to be an artist activist on a daily basis? What are the stories I'm telling? Who's telling them? How are we telling them? And what can I do in my real life to enhance that? And the last thing that I'll say is, like, for example, I work with formerly incarcerated people a lot. And then we'll start to brainstorm, and I'll be like, oh, maybe let's create a script about this. So it's uplifting their stories as much as I possibly can.
That's amazing. And I'm going to come back to you because I want to talk about who's telling the story. But first, before we get there, let me get Enrique to join our conversation. Enrique, I want you to tell us about your journey and your work as an artist.
Okay. Yes. Well, my childhood was defined by abuse and abandonment. I immigrated to the U.S. at the age of 14. Discrimination, lack of education, and rejection led me to join a gang. I spent almost 2 decades in the prison system being treated as an animal, and I still wonder why I still get labeled or treated as a criminal, a gang member, and I often get called illegal alien, in which I refuse to accept. On November 10, 2020, Governor of California Gavin Newsom clemency my sentence, which means I was being released not because of my past, but because of the person I became. I educated myself and earned a college degree. I got certified as a drug and alcohol counselor. I helped create self-help programs to create or to change the culture in the prison system while I was incarcerated. I look around our communities and many of our juvenile kids are sent to prison with longer sentences. And many others that still struggle with their immigration status. And I still wonder why. A lot of these communities, it's a lack of education or low funds for these low-income communities putting our kids at limbo. Others are struggle with their uncertainty of their legal status. Many juveniles do not know their native land. They were brought to this nation without having any choice. So that's what I continue advocating. I continue speaking up. On February 11, I was granted immigration relief, and I was released from mass custody. And even today, I use my art, I use my voice to speak for the what I call it's like a lost culture, a lost community, and a forgetting community because no one really talks about them. So I want to close the gap between our communities and these lost communities so that way they can understand each other.
That's amazing. Let me ask you a question. There's a lot of, especially people of color in the system, as you know.
Yes.
And of course, we know the sentencing is always unfair. That's a no-brainer. How were you able, and how are you able to separate the treatment that you were given and what happened to you to becoming this positive role model that's a counselor? How are you able to do it? Because a lot of people, when they come out of the penitentiary system, sometimes have a hard time moving forward and, maybe making better choices.
Yes, of course. I was sitting, I love art, and I think I find a peaceful way, a motivation through my art. And as I was sitting there and looking at my drawings, they all represent pain, love, and understanding. So when I started looking at some of those things, it was in the way that I couldn't communicate with other people, so I was putting it on paper. And a lot of people there is stigma about a lot of drawings when it comes to the prison system, and they get labeled as gang drawings. But a lot of those drawings represent a lot of pain, a lot of things that people cannot be voicing it. So it took time for me to start understanding and start seeking for help. It was great people that helped me in the process of everything, but it took a commitment from myself. And I think that's one of the things when I start looking at my drawings and I start looking at some of those things that we'll talk about pain, loneliness, rejection, discrimination, and I send a message to other people. So I start utilizing some of those things and I start internalizing some of those things and I start educating myself, which it was great thing that even immigrants could take college classes. So I took advantage of that and I started educating myself. And once I understood that it's been a lot of lack of information in our communities, our brown communities, our black communities, and they're putting us all against each other. But once we understood that we all have similar backgrounds, we all have similar households, and that's when I started understanding that something needed to be changed. Something needed to be different. And education, it's something that I always translate to people. I always advocate for that because I think without any education, we'll always be seated in the same place.
That's awesome. So who are you talking to in your art? Do you have a particular target that you want to reach?
Yes. Because I think there is stigma about a lot of people in our community. When they see these type of drawings, the first thing they said is it's a gang related drawing. So I want to change the perspective of people when they look up a drawing, and then for them to think about the pain, think about the message that they're trying to translate to other people, Because one thing that I understand, including myself, that it was hard for me to tell somebody how I feel, how I think, and about my past. But I would put it on paper and I would deliver the message to the paper. And a lot of these people do the same thing. So today when I look at a drawing, I look for those specific things. So when people ever wonder and they look at a drawing, think about the struggle the person is going through when he's creating that drawing. Because you can only imagine a person will be in a lonely cell drawing something like that. They could not be able to translate that message to anyone. And the only way he can translate that message is through a paper and a pen. And that's why I want to send that message. And you guys can carry that message from me to other people when they look at some of the drawings.
Thank you. We certainly will. Listen, I want to get back to everybody because there's this burning question about why art could be an effective vehicle for, protest, for activism, which is why we're here, artivism. And when I reference myself, I was reading literature about different authors and writers and artists, and I came across an interview that Baldwin had given many, during the civil rights movement. And he talked about not fitting in, not feeling like he fit in the context of activism. He was a writer, and at some point on his journey, he figured it out. He said, yes, I am also an activist, even as a writer, and he figured out that his job was to document history, and that is part of activism. So for me, as a publisher, I founded the Immigrant magazine, and exactly for some of the reasons you have talked about, Enrique, just tired of the stigma, tired of the messaging, tired of not seeing the true representation on TV, on media platforms about immigrants. It would always be criminal. It would never be about celebrating. Think about all the inventors of this country. They all have immigrant heritage. But you'll never hear those stories. It's always, an immigrant committed this offense, but you don't hear the good story. So I'm going to start with Alysia. Okay, because Alysia, you talked about who's telling that story, that it matters. Yet, we have all these amazing artists out there who have a hard time even breaking through. And so it almost sometimes feels like we're just preaching to our own choir. Like, how do we get our message out there? Are you muted?
I don't think there's one answer to that. I think my truth is there's a couple of different pieces to that puzzle. One is listen to your artist heart and soul, and when the creative urge, like whatever your creative urge to tell your story happens, like tell that story. And whenever the urge, like we all as artists have these ideas like, wow, what if I sent this to Steven Spielberg? And then you're like, well, he won't care. I'm not going to do that. Who am I? Who do I know? Blah, blah, blah. I say, do it, it takes an outrageous amount of courage to tell your story and share it. But you never know who will want to be your champion. And I think one of the magical things about this moment is there are a lot more open doors to that possibility. And again, it's really scary. So there's another piece of that puzzle, which is find your people, your beloved cheerleaders who will cheer you and be like, come on, you can do it, but also hold you accountable and be like, hey, that story you told or that piece of art you made or whatever it is great. Let's together make a plan for who we're going to reach out to. And it's really scary, but I got you. So I think when we do things in community, it's so much easier than, especially as an artist, it can feel very, very lonely when you're creating by yourself. So I think that's really my answer, is listen to your artist's soul about the stories it wants to tell. Have the courage to tell them, because if you're being guided to tell a story, it's the right story. Like, listen to the guide to, like, oh, who should I send it to? Even if it's really scary, and find your community of people who will encourage you and help you to tell that story. Yeah.
That's very important. Thank you so much, because Enrique spoke a lot about the stigma. So I want to bring Jeanette. Jeanette, you focus on the Latinx community, and it's one of those communities that has really experienced that stigma, along with the, it's the brown community of sorts. Tell us a little bit about the VDLA and how your organization employs art to change these perceptions.
Thank you for that question. Yes, VDLA, for many people who might have never heard of it, is Voces De Los Artistas, which is a affinity group that lies under a greater organization that works for immigrant and workers' rights, which is Voces de la Frontera. In the beginning, when Voces De Los Artistas was created, it wasn't created in a calm setting. It was created in a very struggling time when the Trump administration was elected in 2016. Before that, we had marches that Voces de la Frontera would hold each and every May 1st. For many people, it might be the labor marches, but for here in Milwaukee, it's the immigrant workers and labor marches. There was 1 to 2 artists that were hired within a couple of years. And those artists would create the flyers, would create events, would create the graphics for the movement. However, we know as artists that we can only do so much, that there will be a time where we need to say, we need to rest. Our body needs to rest, our mind needs to rest, our creativity does. And that is why Voces de los Artistas was created, because there were artists that were passionate about the organization, passionate about the movement, but that were burning out. So during that time in 2016, one of our members, and I see as my mentor, Nicholas, went and was talking with our executive director of Voces de la Frontera, Christine. How can we make sure that the movement doesn't fall, that the movement keeps on going, that we're able to continue to bring that hope? From that conversation, the affinity group of Voces de los Artistas was created. To be able to have a group of artists to come together and share one idea that art is not just for a gallery, that art is not just in display in a private setting for those who can't afford it, but art is to create passion, art is to move people, to move hope.
That's
so
a
from
very...
that, the affinity group then created the 20 to 30 artists that are now Voces de los Artistas. From there, graphics were just spilling out, from parachute banners to banners that were about 100 yards wide, saying they tried to bury us. They didn't know we were seeds. For 100-yard, like, concrete installations, murals that says, voting is power. Black and brown lives matter. To parachutes, where we all know when we're in elementary school, we're able to lift it up and go right underneath. But now these parachutes have a meaning. Now they have a thing, they have a logo, they have a movement. When kids see these parachutes, I can't tell you how many people, adults as well, will run underneath it just to feel that hope, that freedom, that air, the love for the movement. We see as movements as being a struggle, as being heavy, as being a crisis. But how can we motivate people? How can we motivate our families, our communities, our artists, the people that are continuing that struggle to uplift? And that is why these graphics are so important. That is why Voces de los Artistas brings in the hope. It not only shows graphics with children, with babies as leaders of the liberation. But it also puts an image on what is a leader. We see Cesar Chavez, we see Martin Luther King Jr., we see individuals, right? But we never see people together as groups. We never see the worker that works behind that grocery store to be an iconic image for the march. And that is why Voces de los Artistas exists. Not to create the art, but to listen to the people behind the movements. For the people to tell us, no, that is not how you say it in Spanish. No, these are not the words that we use. These are the graphics that we want. Artists are seen as a very pretentious group of people that either make money or starve, right? But how can we change the shift of artists to be that movement, to be a part, to assist, to grow within the collective mind?
Okay.
So this is why it is important for us to be able to come together, even as artists ourselves, to see young people. Like I'm seeing amazing young people here, and I cannot wait to get old. Because that's where we know that we have a future. That's how we know we have liberation. And when I think about Voces de los Artistas, I think of everyone who I hope to see in the future, and as well as all of the artists. Now it's over 100 different artists that continue this process with their art showing not only locally, but nationwide. We're able now to gather artists like Fabiana Rodriguez from California, William Estrada from Chicago, to create logos, to create graphics. Voces de la Frontera's new image is their new logo was created from Fabiana Rodriguez's art piece. So the power of art can also move into organizations and change, expand.
All right, Jeanette. Thank you so much. I'm going to come back to you. Your thing is so powerful, and I have so many questions for you because we talk about movements are just as important as the individual artists. But I know our very great activist here, Miss Alysia, is going to have to leave us. But before you go, Alysia, I just want to thank you for being with us. But I wanted to ask you one quick question before you leave, right? Is the process just as important as the art itself? What do you think?
It's so funny you said that. I was just in a workshop of a new play, and I love this play so much. And it is women created. There were only women in the room. It's a multiracial cast, which I love. And I said in the room, the more I am in this industry and craft, the more I feel like the process is absolutely equally important for a multitude of reasons. One being how we do it is like every second of our lives is an example of how we want to live our lives. So it needs to be an authentic experience, and it needs to be, all need to be learning from each other all the time. And what I'm not certain about, like, I don't know the answer if the process needs to be clean. And I don't know if anyone's read My Grandmother's Hands, but there's like clean pain and dirty pain. And like clean pain is how we grow, and sometimes it's painful. And I feel like the process, I don't know if the result is better when the process is clean, but I know that my heart is definitely happier and my soul is more evolved when the process is more authentic. And for me, it's like, I'm growing. How can I continue to grow so that in the next process, I can be the most evolved and inclusive as possible?
Well, you're giving us a lot to think about. Now I'm thinking clean. What was the other one again?
Well, it's an amazing book, highly recommend. I have a deep feeling other people on the panel may have read it, but it's a book called My Grandmother's Hands.
Okay.
And he talks about a lot of body work, how we heal our bodies from trauma. And he talks about clean pain versus dirty pain. And that clean pain is really important. Like, we're going to experience pain, especially as white-bodied people learning to do this better. So,
well, thank you so much. You've been amazing.
It's lovely to meet you all.
So we'll see you next time. Hopefully we'll continue this conversation.
I would love it. Take good care.
And that will, continue. So back to those of us that are staying put. Let's continue where Alysia left off. I'm going to ask the question to Giovanni. Giovanni, you've been quiet for a minute. So let me defer to you. Why do you think art is an effective way for messaging, social justice issues and things like immigration? Why do you think art is a good vehicle as well?
Who may not, for example, speak English or speak Spanish or speak, that language, won't be able to understand what is going on. But I think the beauty and the benefits of using art for social movements is how universal it is. And it's not just about this universal experience, but I also believe, when we create, an art piece, it is kind of this embodiment of your story. And kind of like the philosophy that I've always carried with the work I create is, hey, feel this with me. It's about sharing these emotions. It's about sharing these experiences with hopes that we can all rally together and continue to pursue these social movements. And honestly, that's why art has been and will always be the best tool for, social justice.
Art fitting the messaging of your work?
Very similar to Giovanni. I think that it's the emotion that we put into it. I always feel like art is our own essence combined with other elements and other essences in our world, right? Particularly in Earth. And so all of us as beings, we all can sense that. We all naturally can feel the emotion, even within other animals, right? If you hear a cow crying, like, that it's in pain. And so I think, similar to how Giovanni said, it is a universal language. It's its own version. And with me, through words and through plants and natural elements, I feel like I communicate a lot of feelings of disconnection from our Earth, right? And I mean, you can see it when we're disconnected from ourselves, we're disconnected to our environment and what's happening with climate crisis and how that is connected to our social justice. It is connected to our individual health as human beings. When we kill our Earth, we kill ourselves and vice versa. And it's just an interconnected knowing that we all know. So I really think that art is one of the greatest versions of human expression that there is, and it's one of the most ancient forms of communication that we have. It was probably one of the first ones that we even learned, even before language, when we were creating things, right, and expressing things. And it's how our society even evolved to create buildings and so many other things that we will continue and we will evolve with.
Wow, that's amazing. And Juanita, you're into communication strategies and you really know the plight of undocumented immigrants. And when you heard Enrique share his story, you know the stigma that goes with being undocumented and the stigma that goes with when we can do something, presentations like, oh, we are horrible people. How do you use strategies? What kinds of strategies do you employ to change this narrative? And how important is it?
Sure. Thank you, Pamela. I think one of the most important things for us to realize is that the anti-immigrant narrative is disinformation, right? It is a narrative made up of lies about immigrant people meant to separate and to blame someone else besides those who are getting more wealth on the backs of undocumented people. And so it is a lie, right? It is disinformation. And so I think that's one of the first most important steps when we're thinking of narrative, realizing that this anti-immigrant narrative is built on lies. And then I think that one of the most important things that we can do is to be able to give the mic to immigrant people, give the mic to undocumented people, and to allow them to share their own narrative and to build. And I think that's been the work of United We Dream, or that I've done in my time there as well. Figure out how can we build a narrative that comes from the people who are most impacted. And part of that is allowing people to share their stories, to share their lived experience, and figure out how can art allow us to transmit that, as the panelists just said, right, in a language that everybody else can understand. And so when I think of campaigns like the Home is Here campaign, or even during the Trump years when our team sat in a room full of immigrant people and sort of said, what is the message that we want to give right now? What is the thing we want to say? And that's how the message of Here to Stay was born, right? And so providing the opportunity and really being willing to give the mic to the people who are most impacted will allow us to develop narratives that are true and that can be long-term and inspire more people to join us. And so I think that that's really the key to being able to fight back against the disinformation that continues to exist in our communities, to build narratives that are authentic and powerful, and that allow us to transform the values of those people who are out there listening and who may not share the same experience.
Wonderful, wonderful. So I'm going to go to Jeanette. Oh, 1 second. Enrique, did you have something to say? Sorry. That's okay. So let me defer to Jeanette. Jeanette, have you seen a shift in perspective, with what you do in terms of how, the importance of the art in your work, in your practice?
Yes, I have definitely seen some change. And the beauty of working in a group of artists is that it's not just the artist itself that creates the artwork. Within like Voces De Los Artistas, we have what we call art builds, where the community, where families, where individuals, where children come and they create the artwork themselves. Yes, the main artist creates the graphic. We then apply it to a parachute and a banner. But then families come and then they're able to have a paintbrush and a bucket of paint to be able to be a part of that process. Many of our families have probably never held a brush. I remember there was one little girl who was so excited. And that was around the time where I was going for my teacher licensure as an art teacher. And inside my school, we have art. But I was like, aren't you excited to make this parachute? I bet you can't wait to tell your art teacher. And she said, I don't have an art teacher. That weighs so much as to what the priority of our society is, as to where artwork is seen inside of our own communities, inside of our public system. If we don't put art in the forefront at this time, then what hope can we give to our future? And in that face, that small girl, that was the hope that I saw. Her family came and said they were coming for 2 hours. They stayed for all 3 days.
Wow.
Early in the morning, all the way till the art build ended. We thought we weren't going to see them again because her mom worked an essential worker job. But on the day of the art build, that same little girl got to hold her parachute. And I say her parachute because she made it. That's the beauty of the story. That's the beauty of personal give, is that people then become the movement. People are then contributed. People are the art. There's no artists. There is families that are artists. There is communities that thrive. In some of these marches, we have banners that are held not just to make a statement, but to be held as shade. When it rains, what's the first thing people do? They go under the parachutes for safety and protection. So this then art becomes transformed. These picket signs are then umbrellas, right? These parachutes are then protection from the sun. The same 100-yard banner that we were marching under was giving shade to a family who had a son who was in a wheelchair. And we come back to that idea of what is art? Art is everything that the people, the movement, make. When we see art inside of our streets, when we see art in actions and movements, that is the beauty, because we're giving not only the graphic, but the quality of art.
Thank you so much.
Think of things that are free.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Jeanette. I just love your passion. I wish we had so much more time, but I know Enrique has something to contribute, and I'm hoping that Enrique want to talk about impact, because this is all about the impact of the art, right? So go ahead.
Yes. So just as I'm here, listen to everyone, especially when it comes down to art. And I go back into the times when I was just reading books, especially about history, and art was the first language ever used by the human beings. So art has been in our society for a lot of years, and I think what we're doing in here, and what I hear everyone doing it, is we just educating our communities when it comes down to that. Just as they did it before, to communicate each other and to bring some of those languages back into today's. And that's why I'm so eager when I draw. I'm so perfectionist when I draw, and I see it with other artists as well. And it's because we want to make sure that we deliver the message into what we want to put into it. So that's what I wanted to share, because when I hear everybody speak, it motivates me to continue doing what I do. And I just want to thank all of you guys.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I'm going to ask one last question to Giovanni. Giovanni, most people, when they act, some of them get an Oscar, get an Emmy, get all of that. Does it matter to you that you get an award, or what is most important to you in the work that you do as a photojournalist?
I think, like I had mentioned before, pursuing a degree in art, we're always told about these metrics like galleries, art museums, and, even on social media, how many likes your image gets. And then I think about also, like when you're an artist, you always hear these same phrases, like, how are you going to feed yourself? How are you going to make money? And when you have these thoughts and ideas, like, these are the metrics that I value my work, you start to think like, okay, if I sell an art piece for X amount of money, will that make it, a great piece of art? And for me, what I've been able to find out, especially now at a young age and early on in my career, is that it's not really about that. It's about how many people can my artwork give hope to? How many people are being able to be influenced by the work I create? How many people connect with my work at such a personal level? And how can I share my experience not only, with my family and my friends, but my whole community, if it's here in Milwaukee or, hopefully across the country and around the world.
Thank you so much. So we could go on and on. I know everybody has something to say. I was hoping that Giovanni would summarize it for all of us. It's not about the awards. It's about the passion and the drive and the mission, the intent that we have. We can all agree, right? Let me hear, yay. All right. Thank you all so much. This was a great conversation. Unfortunately, we've come to the end of our hour. I hope that everyone that was listening learned something. I want to thank you all for the work that you do. Good luck with everything. And I'm hoping those studios will share details about, how people can access your art. Some of you have art that you're selling, and some of you just want people to be impacted. And I'm sure we all want to impact our society. So for all our attendees at home or wherever you're watching, we hope you learned how your voice can be used through your art for greater impact. Thank you all for joining us, and please stick around for the next important panel of Immigrant Voices. Thank you.